Okay, I think we can start, Isabel.
The YouTube is already on, and Xavier will cut it as soon as you start, so it's fine.
Okay, perfect. Well, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this second event organized in the context of the Circ for Life EU-funded project on circular economy business models in the agri-food value chain. Now, yesterday, for those who also joined our series of webinars, we focused on the electronics value chain, while today we'll focus on another value chain that focuses similar but also different challenges linked to unsustainable production consumption patterns. Now, just a few statistics just to set the context. Now, we could not find any very recent figures on food waste in Europe, and maybe we will hear something from the speakers later. But according to the most recent estimate, we found that around 20% in Europe of overall food production is lost or wasted somewhere along supply chains. While according to more recent estimates by the Food and Agriculture Organization, in Europe per capita food waste is among the highest in the world, with 280 kilograms per year. Now, of course, all of these unsustainable production patterns are linked to significant environmental impacts. And just to bring some statistics in the discussion, evidence indicates that food that is lost or wasted along the supply chain accounts for roughly 30% of the world's agricultural area, 20% of fresh water consumption, and 40% of energy consumption of the food supply chain. And of course, we should also keep in mind that food waste is not only linked to environmental impact, but also to a loss of significant economic opportunity. So given this context, given these significant challenges linked to unsustainable food, let's say, value chains, building more sustainable production consumption food systems becomes really very important. In this regard, circular business models can play a role to this transition. Now, how can they actually achieve this? Through, for example, designing, let's say, food products based on circularity principles, through identifying ways, of course, to reduce waste along supply chains, but also through collecting and reutilizing food residues along the supply chain and bringing them back somehow in the production process. So there are multiple opportunities and multiple approaches, and some of these approaches were tested within the Circ for Life project. We had during the 42 months of project implementation, we tried to actually implement some of these approaches in a small scale. And today we will actually have with us two of the companies that they try to implement business approaches, together with two external speakers from international organizations and foundations, in order to really have a debate around how to build more sustainable or more circular food systems. Now, similar to the yesterday structure, I mean, we will have basically a flow of speakers, all of them having 10 minutes for their introduction in the beginning. And then there will be time for discussion. And again, not to repeat, you can use the Q&A function of Zoom to ask questions, and we'll try to bring them in the discussion. Now, we have four very distinguished experts with us. And we will first start with Camilla Adriana Bucatarao, who is international consultant, food losses and waste analyst at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. So Camilla will present insights from the work that the FAO is doing on food waste statistics, but also on food supply chain analysis. So we look forward to her perspectives. Then we will continue with Maria Chiara Femiano, who is a senior policy officer at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And Maria will present the work that they are actually doing at the moment on designing more sustainable food systems with a focus on the fast-moving consumer goods companies and retailers. Then we will move on to the first speaker from the Circ for Life project, and we will have with us Laila Del Sola Caron, who is an innovation expert, and in the past years, she worked closely with Alia, which is a company in Spain, which among various different things, produces meat products. So following the experience of the meat, let's say, sector, we will continue with Jonathan Smith, who is the owner of the Silix Organics Farm. And Jonathan, he will present his experience with trying to integrate more circularity approaches in his farm, but also his experience from working with other companies and farmers in his island. Now, please be reminded, if you tweet about the event, to tag our account so we can retweet. So the project account is @Circ4L, and the SEPS account is @SEPS_think tank. And later you might also see some small surprises from us, like yesterday, in the form of drawings representing the discussions. That is basically the structure. So I think there's no need for further delay, so we can move to Camilla Adriana Bucatarao. So Camelia, first of all, thank you for your time, for being with us today. I know that food waste has been your key work area for quite some time. And I know you have been very deep in this topic, so we look forward to your insights and your perspective for here at FAO.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you very much for hosting this event, which is key indeed in our current work to be able to share with the broader audience what we have been doing and with whom we have been partnering and what results have been achieved. I do agree with the highlights that you have already mentioned on the key data that we have available for food loss and waste and what impacts indeed we may consider social, economic, and environmental. So, however, indeed, perhaps the discussion will also bring innovative viewpoints and innovative solutions. So I'm very happy to be here today with you. Without further ado, allow me to share my screen here. All right, so my presentation will focus on SDG target 12.3 that works around prevention and reduction of food loss and waste with a multi-actor and multidisciplinary approach for data, for analysis of data, how we use data on our decisions, either at policy level, but also at food supply chain level for our investments. So I will bring up a little bit of the general context that provides the evidence of the relevance of this topic. Then I will have some information for Europe and Central Asia region, because FAO has the office in that works in the Europe and Central Asia region as well. So we focus on the specific requirements that countries highlight for us for this topic. And then I will also bring forward some information from the European Union and their results and our collaboration with some of the European institutions, as well as other actors within the European Union, including countries, of course. Now, before going into the topic as such, I would like to bring forward to our attention the linkages that are within the Agenda 2030 for the 12.3 target. When we talk about food loss and waste prevention and reduction, us as FAO, however, also a broad number of state and non-state actors connect this topic with several other targets. So it is quite interesting for us to see how prevention and reduction of food loss and waste, responsible consumption and production of food will contribute to SDG target 6 on clean water and sanitation, the life below water, the 14 target, as well as sustainable cities and communities. So it is quite worthwhile to mention this in the beginning of our discussion, because the evidence that SDG 12.3 brings forward with new data and new insights on prevention and reduction of food loss and waste could potentially as well contribute to the other targets. So as I was saying, FAO is focused on this region. So I will bring forward some of the key information on causes as well as solutions and partnerships in this region for Europe and Central Asia. We have been working on development of national strategies in countries from outside the EU. We have supported governments and local authorities as well for national capacities on food loss and waste measurement and reporting. We have promoted a lot on the knowledge and information and building up on networks on recovery and distribution for safe and nutritious food. And we have raised awareness a lot around solutions that are already available about prevention and reduction, as well as on the work around statistical capacities for countries to work around on reporting data on food loss and waste, because that is a significant gap to address. Now, on the data side, the latest information that we have on food losses, because we work around the target 12.3 by dividing it on food losses from production up to wholesale, excluding retail, and then from retail up to households for food waste. On the food loss side, the latest information that we have on the estimates at global level are produced with a baseline of 2015-2016. These were published in a report from FAO on food loss and waste in 2019, and show that around 30% globally of the food that is being produced for human consumption is not reaching human consumption level. Now, what does it mean? It means that along the food supply chain, from production up until wholesale, as I said, without the other steps, we have around so it's 30 in total, food loss and food waste. And we have the food loss side that reaches quite significant levels around the world. So when some years ago we were talking about this need of addressing food loss and waste, we didn't have yet a clear understanding about the data. However, the recent studies, such as this one on the first Global Food Loss Index, confirmed that around the world, regions reach up to around 20% of food being lost. Now, the causes are varied. So independently of the development status in the region, countries face more or less causes that are around the lack of accurate data, the investment climate that is quite, let's say, it's still challenging to address this issue, trade and taxation policies that still need to be clarified, lack of awareness on the complexity, so lack of understanding about the solutions, some difficulties and gaps in value chain coordination, confusion about food safety, and in the same time, the priorities that have been highlighted by the states are around areas that improve performance and enhance the capacity of collaboration and partnership and promote food recovery and redistribution. And in the same time, with the idea that food businesses should be actually sustainable in the long term. So the sustainability perspective through the lens of food loss and waste prevention and reduction has gained relevance in the last years. Now, as I was saying, we collaborate a lot with some European institutions. The one that is hosted by the European Commission, the Platform on Food Loss and Food Waste, is one of them. The European Economic and Social Committee is another one. The Committee of the Regions is another one that has, let's say, promoted the topic. Around cities, we work with Milan Food Urban Policy Pact and some of the private sector actors, associations such as Eurocop. Now, why we are working around this with the European institutions? Because we have been able to transfer some of the knowledge from the wider region as well as from the global perspective for the discussions that took place at the European platform level. For instance, in the discussions of the use by and best before dates and the guidelines that are available on that. On the data, we have discussed a lot on how countries will monitor and report on food waste through the directive requirements from 2018 that addresses waste globally as a category for EU states, but includes also food waste. So there has been a quite significant exchange of information that allowed somehow the institutions as well as member states and local authorities, together with the private sector and civil society, to be informed in real time around the topic on how it develops broader in a more broader way outside of the EU. Now, date marking is one information that we have been able to work with also at Codex Alimentarius level and around the, let's say, raising awareness a lot, measurement and data, another topic. As I was saying, we, as FAO, have been mandated to report data on food loss and waste. We have the food loss index on one side, up until processing, packaging, excluding retail. Then UNEP, UN Environmental Program, has been mandated with the technical support from FAO to track and report on food waste. The food loss index has produced, as I was saying previously, the first data in 2019, and the food waste, let's say, index was produced this year and was published for the first time, confirming both of them, let's say, taken together, overall confirming the around 30% globally we have, let's say, this challenge to address 30% is lost. It does not reach human consumption. Now, I would like to highlight towards the end of my presentation the gaps in data that we have and would need to be addressed from countries, let's say from a country perspective, but this means that countries, let's say states, governments, offices that work with statistical reporting would need to work with the private sector in those countries to actually improve on the data. So it's something that it's under the jurisdiction of countries. However, countries would need to develop the strengthening of the capacities for private sector to work around this kind of data. So FAO has published the first food loss and waste database that covers globally what information is available around this. We have, because of the work on food loss and waste indices, we have this huge amount of data that was then at the base of this, let's say, knowledge tool that we have to track progress on data. And this is a snapshot of the data that is available for Europe and North America. Now, what I would highlight to you here is that because of the gaps that we have, so globally we have around only 4% of countries that report. Because of these gaps, we cannot yet estimate or have an understanding, even an initial understanding, however, about the trends. So when we talk about percentages in reduction of food loss and waste, we still have not reached the level of data availability and quality that would allow us to have a confident estimate around the trends. So are we going in the right direction, either as nations or regions, in this case also for the EU countries? And this is a more specific, even more specific, close to the EU countries data that shows quite significant gaps that would still need to be covered and addressed. Now, the directive from 2018 at EU level that covers food waste from production up until households will definitely be in a position to address some of these gaps. So I encourage you to consult not only the directive, but also to see, for instance, at country level, what is the progress, how you may, from a research or from a private sector perspective, contribute to improving this data. Now, concretely, as FAO, we have been also supporting countries as they highlight their own, let's say, priorities. We have gathered knowledge around some of key areas that would need support. Now, from a policy and technical perspective, the design and implementation of data collection strategies has been highlighted always. So this is something that we are currently also quite aware and quite active to provide information and training on. So data collection strategies and methods and instruments. Now, once that is done, data integration and validation is another step that will follow. So currently we are offering training on one side, and then we work with the countries to actually have a mapping and then an integration of the data to be able to report for the food loss index. Now, locally, and this is at country level, locally, we have been working with cities, with private sector and civil society organizations that have showed interest and highlighted this need for food supply chain analysis. So very close to the food supply chain to allow us to track the food supply chain and identify critical loss points. We have also helped enabling the platforms of dialogue that need to be, let's say, facilitated in a non-competitive manner to allow the sharing of information on solutions that are already available, and then the recovery and distribution for human consumption, because what we have noticed along the food supply chains, there are always points that can benefit from this type of solution to recover and redistribute. And countries in the EU have now a guidance around this topic, and they have worked a lot to actually understand the topic and how private sector can enhance this solution. Outside the EU, countries are actually starting to show interest and gather more and more information and strength around this type of solution. Now, capacity can be developed as well around definitions so that we clearly talk about the same thing. What does it mean to actually have food loss and waste? So as I said, also methodologies. Now, the communication side is extremely important. We should not, let's say, place it in another let's say, work stream, we should always place it as important as all the other work streams that we have around this topic. And communication, what we have, let's say, noticed in the EU, however, also outside the EU, is that solutions to prevent and reduce food loss and waste are still in need to be communicated clearly. Investment opportunities, because food business operators may not yet have a clear idea that actually investing in food loss and waste prevention reduction will bring very interesting returns on investments and in quite short period of times. So this is a gap in their let's say, awareness that was definitely highlighted in the EU, outside the EU as well. Now, returns on investments is very useful to actually have produced also more knowledge, so on the research side, and also communicate this opportunity for the private sector. Traceability systems have not yet included available information on how to prevent and reduce food loss and waste. So traceability, I may refer to traceability in your procurement, let's say in procurement operations, and I may refer to traceability as in any other operation. So traceability has yet perhaps a potential to be tapped into in order to actually include food loss and waste prevention and reduction. So these are some of the key areas that have been highlighted throughout the region, in the EU as well as outside the EU. Now, materials and links are available.
If you can conclude in 1 or 2 minutes, just the
yes.
time and the end of the discussion. Yeah.
Yes, so materials and links are available. As I was saying, we have a website that deals with actually presenting you the updates on SDG 12.3, the technical platform on measurement and reduction of food loss and waste that captures the knowledge not only on data, but also on solutions and other topics around this. The report that published the first data on the food loss index in 2019 is already there. And we have also different type of e-learning courses that addresses the sub-indicator on food loss for the food loss index. However, also we have the case study methodology that has been presented in an e-learning course, along with these guidelines, the educational materials that from 5 years to 14 years plus present solutions, address this problem, and facilitates discussions with youth, with children, with teachers and their communities. So I invite you to consult them, to let's say, disseminate them, because the topic itself, even if in the past 5 to 6 years has been registering a lot of improvement around knowledge and dissemination of knowledge, at local and national level, there is still quite a lot of room for actually implementing what is reached now as knowledge. So thank you very much again, and this is the end of my presentation. Back to the moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Camilla. Very, very insightful perspectives on the progress that has been achieved in the domain of food waste statistics, but also of the gaps that still remain. And I have some questions for myself, but maybe I keep them for later. And I think what you mentioned regarding the need for better quality data, also through collaboration between governments and businesses, I think that's a very good bridge to the next presentation. And we have with us Maria Chiara Femiano from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And Maria, thank you first of all for being with us today. And I know you're in between traveling, from what I understand. And I also know that you very recently have published a new report. So I guess we have the privilege to hear about this report and your perspectives from working with the fast-moving consumer goods industry. So we look forward to your perspectives and lessons learned.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be today with you and discussing circular economy in the food system. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And can you see it fine? Hello?
Yes, it's very good. Yes.
Good. Okay. So let's start. So this is a report, this is a study that we published this week looking at redesigning the food system through regenerating nature and the circular economy. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation started investigating what it would actually mean to apply the principles of the circular economy to the food system and what solutions actually could be there. First, in 2019, with a study specifically focused on cities and the role that they could have as hubs for change, given that 80% of all food is expected to be consumed in city by 2050. And through that, we also started cooperation with a number of cities, Milan, one of those that was also mentioned by the previous speaker, but also New York, Sao Paulo, London, and others. And this cooperation continues to this date. We also looked at the potential of circular economy as a solution framework for biodiversity loss and climate change, and within this, where the food system can play a role. But in this new report that has just come out, we've actually focused on FMCGs and retailers, looking at these players in the food system, as they have a huge demand power, and as they source a lot of food, they influence a lot of how land is farmed, and they also basically design a lot of the food that we eat every day. Just touching again on the principles of the circular economy. So we all know that we live in a linear economy, and that we instead want to move into one where we have elimination, circulation, and regeneration. So eliminate, circulate, and regenerate are those principles that we look at when we think of a movement towards a circular economy, and where the food system would be one that addresses climate change, prevents biodiversity loss, and gives back to the natural system while using them, of course, for the production. So there is a positive outcome. What is the opportunity that we saw while researching for this study? The opportunity that we saw was really in design, because the three principles that I mentioned before are all driven by design. So the elimination, the circulation, and the regeneration do not happen by themselves, but they're actually built into the system. And just as like clothes that we wear or the products that we use every day, also our food is designed. A bit like what I mentioned before, that businesses actually have a whole series of decisions that they make when they produce our food, and so there's really an opportunity for action. For our study and the research, we saw that the top 10 FMCGs and retailers influence about 40% of the agricultural land in the EU and the UK alone. So again, this confirmed the potential of actually having these players that, of course, are part of the problem, but they also have a big potential to be part of the solution. The concept of food design, of course, is not it's not new. Let's say, in many cases, through our interviews, we saw that companies and retailers sometimes do not necessarily address it as food design, but actually what it is everything that goes into the production of a product. So from the concept to the ingredient selection, to the ingredient sourcing, and to the packaging. And here, if we apply the principles of the circular economy, we can really apply them through all the different dimensions that we have here to again eliminate, circulate, and regenerate. In our study, we focused our modeling and our research particularly in the lotus that you have in the middle, which is really the ingredient selection and the sourcing action that can be taken by these players in the food systems. So these are 4 ingredients and sourcing opportunities that can unlock substantial environmental, economic, and yield benefits. I'm going to quickly go through them just to give basically an overview of how these can be applied. I mean, what they mean, but also how they can work together. So diverse ingredients, if you start from the top, are those that come from a broad range of plant and animal species, as well as varieties within those species. So if we think that today almost 60% of all the calories that we consume come only from 4 crops: wheat, rice, corn, and potatoes, and a lot of these also come from the same kind of crop. So not a very diverse, not a lot of diverse varieties also within these 4 crops. So if we would start using more diversity in the ingredients that we grow, there would be a series of positive outcomes. So it would increase the cultivated biodiversity, so having different kinds that are cultivated, but it would also support an increase in biodiversity and reduce biodiversity loss. It would also enhance the resilience of the food system against such threats such as pests, disease, and environmental shocks. And so in the long term and at the end of the line, enhance food security. As an over-reliance on a single variety can lead to vulnerability. One example here that we found is that, for instance, potatoes. Today we only use a very small selection of potatoes, whereas there would be 4,500 diverse variety that exist globally, and that could really have interesting application from a flavor perspective, but also in terms of resilience for pest, disease, and climate variability. Moving into the second one, we have the lower impact. And lower impact in this context, we mean ingredients that are conventionally produced, so we do not change the way that they're produced, but they have a significantly reduced environmental impact. And so if we include this in the recipes of food products, this could have could bring beneficial outcomes. And so for example, an example that we modeled and we looked at is to design a wheat-based product, for instance, pasta, to make it with peas instead than wheat. And so this would reduce greenhouse gas emission and negative impact on biodiversity. I have the figures here from the report, and basically this change would bring a 5% reduction in biodiversity loss and a 40% reduction in GHG emissions. This would basically happen just by changing the recipe of 100% wheat pasta. That is something we would consume today without necessarily having the alternative. We move then to upcycled, which is a quite interesting one. So upcycled ingredients are those ingredients that are made by food byproducts that would otherwise not have gone into human consumption. Here, a principle of circular economy is to really reuse materials and resources to at their highest level. So of course, with food byproducts, there could be many different applications, but here we're really looking at how this can be used to enter again the food production for the production of new products. There are examples around, and the space is growing, although it is potentially the one that is mostly untapped, and where also business opportunities really can appear, as again with research and investment going into this space, new application could be developed. An example, just to make it real, is that from the production of oat milk, the solid byproduct that comes from that production could be reused and made into flour. And there is a company that is doing that, and that's it's a successful application of an upcycled food byproduct. Finally, regenerative production, and this it's probably it's very talked about and quite discussed at the moment. But here we really mean not so much, we mean, of course, the practices, but we really mean the outcome. So where we see that there is really a potential for regenerating the natural system of the farm level where these practices are being applied. This, of course, we modeled it with a selected number of practices in the EU and the UK, but of course it would look very different in different geographies and with different crops. And this because and this comes from the fact that it's very context dependent. It really depends on the climate, on the type of crop that is being produced, on the practices that have been practiced up to that moment, and so yeah, it's very context dependent. Nevertheless, it can really bring opportunities, and also from an economic perspective. And from our model, we see that for all the ingredients that we modeled, and we modeled wheat, potatoes, and dairy, after a transition period, there would then be an increase in profitability also at the farm level. The benefits, though, of
Maria, if you could also
yes,
conclude in about 2 minutes.
Yes, the benefit of this, though, comes when all these opportunities are put together and are used together. So instead of just applying one, applying them in combination, and you have some of the results that you would have by doing that. By looking on the green boxes, you would have just better sourcing alone, which would be just regenerative production, while instead on the blue you would have the circular design for food, which is all the opportunity used together. I'm just going to go super quickly through this. These are the call for action and the opportunities that we see for this to become a reality. So for companies to create an ambitious and well-researched action plans to really shift, make the shift in their portfolio, to create a new dynamic with farmers. So really cooperating with them to understand what the transition looks like, what products they will make, and how these products can be all sourced to make new products. Developing iconic products, particularly in the short term, to really showcase the potential. This will not happen from one day to the other, but maybe 1 or 2 iconic products can be created to show that it's possible. Contributing to the use of common on-farm metrics and definition. This to really make sure that the positive outcomes that we want to see are measured and monitored and evaluated, and then advocate for policies that support a nature positive food system. So here, really stressing the importance of a policy system that supports this kind of dynamics and this kind of transition. And I will end there. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Maria, for giving us a good side of the opportunities that already exist in the supply chain. Now, of course, in order for all of these opportunities to be still untapped, I guess there are several barriers in place, and maybe we can go back to them later. So thank you definitely for your contribution. So let's move to the next speaker, and we have with us Laila, basically from Alia in Spain. And I know, Laila, thanks for your time, first of all, for being with us today. And I know you have been working intensively with Alia in basically implementing, introducing circularity principles in their business model. So I'm wondering, what have you actually achieved? I mean, do we have any success stories to share with our participants? Are there any lessons learned? So,
yes, I will share with you what we learned. Do you see my screen?
Yes, it's very good.
Okay, great. So I will start with the context of Alia. Alia is a company, a feed manufacturer, which was founded in 1975. It was funded as a cooperative of different farmers who wanted to ensure the feeding of their animals, and they grew up to 900 shareholders, but on the course of the business, they have now decreased to 250 farming families. From the beginning, they were very active on improving themselves, and they integrated all the value chain vertically around the feed manufacturer, who is the let's say, the mother company of the group. And they grow up to better said, it grew down the value chain to farmers, to the slaughterhouse, and also the meat products manufacturer. They as I was saying, in the year 2000, they started to improve their processes, and they have been certified in ISO 99001, the environmental ISO 40001, and also the laboratory, the ID laboratory is also certified as a experimental and calibrating laboratory, as I said. Also, in 2004, they created their research and development department, and since then they have invested more than 10 million euros in different innovation and research, improving all the feeding formula, but also the farming practices. The project, the Circular Life project was very important for Alia because they had the opportunity to rethink their role in production, and they were in charge of implement all the tools and all the concepts developed in the project. We addressed the circular economy in all their aspects, and the three main concepts that were lead to business models were co-creation, sustainable consumption, and collaborative recycle and reuse that it was presented yesterday. And Alia tried to implement all these business models in the meat sector. So we had the vision of all the project. What we did in the project was to address all the value chain and study it in the whole perspective and in each step of the value chain, and how and we tried to figure how to improve it and make it more sustainable. Because the vision of Alia, I know that nowadays the extended vision is that meat is not is a part of the problem, and we need to reduce the consumption of meat. But Alia, what means is that we still need to consume meat. Meat is part of the solution of the food system, and what we need to do is to eat more sustainable and more healthy meat. And this is the aim of Alia in the project. So we try to figure out how to improve the value chain and the process, and it is needed to highlight that the meat value chain is already very efficient in their consumption of raw materials and in the waste management. So we had not very much how to say many things to improve, because it is from the beginning it is very efficient. So in the project, we try to use all the tools provided by the Circular Life partners, and we try to improve the consumption to raise awareness among the consumers to realize how good is the product they are going to purchase. And also we try to use all the tools for producing a more sustainable product, meat products. We made in the project, we made 2 products, curated meat products, and also we tried to address the recycling of meat. So in the part of the co-creation of sustainable products, as I said, we made 2 new products, and what we learned here is that the most important in the creation of sustainable products is the information that you give to the consumers, right? They need to learn and to see the information in a comprehensive and understandable way. So the first thing that arose is the need of a new eco-labbing, which we produced in the project, which was not foreseen in the beginning. And well, during the production of these products, what also was realized by Alia is that they achieved a product that is 30% more sustainable than the average, and this needed to be visibilized to the consumers. Also,
Laila, if you could also conclude in like 2 minutes maximum.
Okay. Regarding the sustainable consumption, we also could implemented all the tools that were produced in the project, and the lesson learned here was that if we want to influence in the consumers, it is needed to address all the complete range of products, because we had a pilot with our products in the project, but this is not enough for people to change their behavior if they cannot compare with other products. And also we we addressed the recycling, and we addressed in the beginning. We tried to improve the waste management of the meat value chain, and as I said, it is already very efficient in the meat sector. So in the most, until the retailer, the waste management and the waste use of byproducts, it is regulated. We wanted to go a step further with the citizens, and we found some sanitary restrictions. So this was the big issue for us. So we changed to improve the recycling of bio-waste, which is very consolidated in many countries in Europe, but not here in Spain. But what we wanted to improve was the collaborative role of the citizens. So the incentives here to the citizens was the thing to highlight and to test. And this was done in two pilots. We used the intelligent bin as the electronics partners of the project, but also we tried a more simple system, which also had good results, because the big thing in the project is the incentive given to the citizens, which makes participant. They make them participants of the results and improve their engagement. And basically, these three lessons are the ones that we learned from the pilot. And also to highlight that thanks to the project, Alia has continued in the improvement of their feeding formulas, and is now leading a new project in the Prima program, which is addressing the poultry feeding to make it also more sustainable. And thank you to all.
Okay.
On behalf of Juan Carlos, who is the research and development head of Alia, and from myself.
Perfect. Thank you, Laila. And participants will receive your slides later, so they can go back to these messages, and we will go back hopefully to some of these messages later. Now we will close this round of contributions by Jonathan Smith, who's the owner of Silly Organics. So Jonathan, we move to a different completely sector within the agri-food supply chain, and I know that you have had many different experiences within Check for Life, so we look forward to your messages, and if you can do it in 10 minutes, it will really help to have some kind of discussion afterwards.
Thanks, Vasilius. I will give it a go. Okay, so my presentation is about Circular for Life as applied to organic vegetable growing. So this is my farm. A little bit about it. The Silly Organics, it's on the Isles of Scilly, which is in the far southwest of England in the UK. It's a small organic farm. It's about 5 acres, 2 hectares. All the fruit and veg is sold within the islands. It's a small group of islands of about 2,000 people, but with a lot of summer tourists. So there's a radius of about 5 miles. We've been going since 2003, so 18 years. And it's been organic, and we're always very environmentally conscious and striving to improve. Associated to that, some other work I do, I help farmers and growers calculate and reduce their carbon footprint through a tool called the Farm Carbon Calculator. It's one of the leading tools in the UK and in growing international interest. And essentially, it's a tool, as I say, a free tool for farmers to go online, understand their carbon footprint and take steps to reduce it. And this is very much allied to this project as well, although not officially a part of it. So just briefly on the kind of demonstration, which is the same principles applied to Alia, which Lila's just described. So the three elements really are co-creation, reuse and recycle, so addressing waste and recycling, and sustainable consumption, which also for us has included sustainable production. So I'll go through the three parts. So sustainable production, what we've actually done in very simple terms, effectively we've calculated the environmental and social impacts of the business. So that's including a life cycle analysis and a carbon footprint reports, including social impacts through life cycle analysis. Formed an action plan to ensure that the business reduces those impacts. So identify what they are, take steps to reduce them, and then also communicating what we're doing. And on the right here, you'll see a carbon label that we've applied to our products, this particular one onto salad. And this actually shows to the consumer that when you buy this particular bag of salad, the carbon sequestration, so it's actually sequestering carbon, is -1 kilo CO2. And to me, that's quite exciting because that says that essentially when consumers are buying my products, that means they're taking positive steps to reduce their carbon footprint. So what have we learned? Well, particularly that soil has huge capacity for fertility, carbon sequestration and crop health. That's fundamental, and that very much is true for all farmers and growers. Labelling has to be simple to be understood. Calculations must have integrity, and biodiversity is also very, very important alongside understanding LCA and carbon footprint. In the co-creation sector, what we've done is talk with our customers, individual customers, as well as business customers. So we supply some restaurants and some cafes with salad. So we've done things like surveys and talked to them individually and some other feedback as well. On the back of that, we've created new products and services. So on the right, you'll see here some apple juice, which actually I'm just about to do some more tomorrow for this season's crop. Excess apples from the orchard that I can't sell as fresh, I juice and sell in bottles, and that's been very popular. We've also done a lot of consultancy services allied to the carbon calculator, so assisting farmers and growers to reach their for instance, their net zero 2030 goals. How do they get there? We've measured nutrient density of food, which I think is really important. And there's a video about the farm, which I'll put in the chat later on that you can have a look at. That's quite nice, tells the story of the farm and the project. So what have we learned? Well, the co-creation process isn't necessarily easy. One thing it does do is really focus on what are the limits of your business and what do you want to do with your business, what are your desires for it. But what I would say on the positive side, greater engagement with customers can be a really positive aspect, and it's definitely a route to more business. It's a very positive thing, I think, generating more business as well, like through new products and services, and really understanding what your customers actually want rather than what you're presenting to them in terms of products and services. So on the recycling and reuse, in very simple terms, we've improved our waste and recycling. That's just a good thing for any business, obviously. We've made more compost, which is good. So the waste and recycling is about the material items, and the compost is about the biological items. So, weeds, crop waste, outgrade produce, grass clippings, things like that. We've tried new packaging. So we're trying to move away from single-use oil-based packaging towards 100% plant-based plastics that are completely home compostable. And then for the other plastics which we use in the business, so things like ground covers, polytunnel covers, there's quite a lot of plastic use in farming and growing. We've got a plan for plastics on what to do with it and how to reduce it. What have we learned? Well, any good farmer, grower or gardener will tell you can't have too much good compost. So that's great. It's good for the soil, good for crops. Packaging is a really important issue to consumers, and we've really understood that in the feedback. Recycling is an issue, particularly in rural areas. There's not necessarily as good facilities as you would like. Working with suppliers up and down supply chains is really, really important, and engagement with customers is crucial. Key achievements from the project, I would say, certainly the carbon and the eco labels. Here you can see the life cycle analysis label we've also put on products as an alternative to the carbon footprint. The new packaging has been very popular. Customer engagement definitely has been something we've been very happy about and we'll learn more from. The apple juice and the carbon consultancy have been very successful. and our kind of concentration on soil as the kind of key resource of the farm, of the business, has been very positive. What were the challenges? Well, I think one thing was sticking to the project plan. You know, this was written probably 5 years ago, and it's a very fast-moving area, certainly in circular economy. So that's been at times a bit of a challenge. COVID, of course, as for everyone, particularly in not being able to meet people so much. Generally, I think the capitalist input-output economy is not particularly helpful for circular economy. It needs to change. And then communication, just simplicity of communication is really, really important. So getting your messages over about what's behind labels can be a challenge, really. If there'd been no COVID, well, yeah, we could have spent more time talking to people. If we had more time, I think we could have done a lot more, you know, engaged more parts of the business, more parts of the supply chain, and the same with resources as well. So it's just good to acknowledge what you could do in the what if scenario. So I guess getting to the nub of the conversation here with policymakers and people interested in policy, I think fundamentally the learnings from this project, from my perspective, are that farmers must get paid for producing quality food and protecting our environment. And we're seeing that shift, but I think that shift needs to happen quicker. And I think agricultural, food and health policies must join up. That's absolutely critical. Externalities need to be paid for. Fruit and veg should be receive higher subsidies because it links very clearly with health policy as well. Carbon markets, I hope, can provide incentives towards better practice. And circular economy solutions should be better supported. And as I'm speaking from the UK, and for the record, not a supporter of Brexit, what I would say is that EU and UK can still learn from each other. And I think there's some interesting initiatives on both sides that really, that kind of cross-pollination of ideas should continue to happen, and I hope will. For farmers and growers, I think I was alluded to before, I think circular economy can offer loads of business opportunities, so that actually understanding your environmental and social impacts is hugely beneficial, creating that action plan to reduce the impact, and then telling your customers what you're doing and why. And this is the trend, so either engage now or get left behind. And really working with policymakers, governments, and indeed supply chains to kind of improve the environment and the support that enables all that to happen. For other sectors, all these principles can be applied to other businesses, particularly sustainable consumption and production is a bit chicken and egg, but they're really both critical. Integrity is critical. As I said before, supply chains, customer engagement, both critical issues, but really, really positive ones as well, potentially. Traceability, clearly this is where food production and consumption is going. There's lots of opportunities, I think. What I would say is that solutions for large and small scale businesses must be very different. That's kind of quite key. And just be aware of kind of label fatigue and consumers actually understanding what's behind labels. Last couple of slides. I always say in my business, this is really, really key. We all eat. We all make positive food choices. So let's understand where our food comes from, how is it produced, what are the impacts. Engage with the people that you buy your food from. Get closer to the people you buy your food from. And I think that would be a very, very positive action for every consumer to make. And as a kind of just getting on my soapbox for the last slide, why is food so cheap? You know, this is a critical issue. Me as a grower, somebody who relies partly on the income from my farm, food's too cheap, okay? Some people I get can't afford to pay more for food, but I really don't think that's the case for the majority in the Western world. I think it's a choice. And I think we need to start making hard choices about how much we're spending on food. We've never spent so little on food in our kind of recent history as a proportion of our income. But of course, there are further costs of foods, you know, externalities, water pollution, diet-related ill health, rural depopulation. You know, these are big issues that cost the taxpayer and society. And of course, the environment externalities just aren't paid for, as we see with the climate crisis and biodiversity losses. So food needs to be properly priced and paid for in whatever methods we choose, whether at the checkout or through subsidies. And I think fundamentally, let's get public policy and payments to support positive things, including circular economy and sustainable farming, so that we can actually make the food system work better for everybody, including the environment and our health policies as well. So I hope that was useful, and happy to take questions afterwards.
Thank you, John. That was very useful, and with a lot of policy messages. I don't know how many of these we can actually cover today, but in any case, maybe I can also ask Laila and Camilla to turn on their cameras as well, since we move on to the more discussion session. And yeah, I encourage also all of you to. There is still time to use the Q&A function to ask questions. Camilla, I guess you're still there.
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, if you could turn on your camera, if it's possible. Yeah, so basically, maybe we go through a first round of questions. So my first question is from Camilla. And first of all, it was very insightful that you presented all of this work that has been done in past years on food waste statistics, and really a lot of initiatives. But as you briefly presented, there are still quite a lot of gaps, and still that progress is lagging behind. You even showed some EU member states where they are lagging behind. Now, I was wondering if you can, in like 2-3 minutes, just dive in a little bit more specifically in these specific gaps. Are we talking about like concrete data gaps that cannot be retrieved from companies? Are we talking about not understanding what needs to be collected by some countries, or not having the capacities and the technicalities yet, the technical stuff? Are we talking about coordination issues? So where are these big gaps, and how do you think they can be actually filled in the coming years? And while you are considering your response, maybe I also ask the question to the other panelists. So for Maria, I think you presented very well the opportunities that exist, but we know that there are a lot of challenges, and especially in the food value chain, the lack of collaboration and the difficulties of collaboration between sometimes larger and smaller companies. And of course, we're talking about a very complex supply chain when we speak about the food supply chain. So the lack of collaboration arises as a key barrier very often in the discussion. So I was wondering if this is something that you have encountered in your research as well, if you have any suggestions or any solutions. I mean, how can you actually break these silos within companies and increase collaboration opportunities? Is it something that you think that the companies do through own initiatives and supply chain networks? Do you think that there's a good role for policy to play in this regard? For Jonathan, basically, I think you touched a little bit, Jonathan, the issue of smaller and bigger companies and technical solutions that are not really applicable for everyone. And I think the QR codes in Serve for Life was a key message. And I think that's very relevant at the moment, because we discuss about the product passport at the EU level. I don't know if food will be part of this passport, but really the need to increase traceability and transparency across supply chains becoming very, very important in EU policy discussions. But how do we find solutions that basically can be taken up by both small and bigger companies? What's your experience in the project and the collaborative with large companies? And for you, Laila, I know that there were some challenges regarding the integration of the eco-accounting system in the infrastructure of the shop that you had. So basically, such solutions, technical solutions, can be very helpful, but it's not easy to integrate them sometimes in companies that they already have structures and processes in place. So I was wondering if you want to elaborate a little bit on this challenge, and if you have any solution to recommend in this regard. So I start with Camilla. Maybe if you can all keep your time in 2-3 minutes, we will have a time for another round of questions afterwards. Thank you.
All right, so I will focus on let's say on the EU context in this case. Now, the work around food waste became, let's say, more and more relevant in the last 10 years. So it took a while. Basically, one of the reasons that we still talk about the quality and the availability of data for EU is that it took a while to gather all the information that was available, then go through the process of revision of not only what information and data are available at country level, but also at EU level for Istat, and then the methodological review also took place. So while this process was ongoing, several gaps were uncovered, let's say, in the methodology, as well as data availability and quality for food waste. Now, among these gaps that were revealed in this process, we also have the gap on actually having data on food waste as we understand it now, because the discussion and the process started with a comprehensive view that food waste may actually be considered as something different from bio waste. However, the data were still reflecting the the bio-waste data. And this indeed, let's say, it was something that needed to be clarified first and foremost on the methodological side. So do we want to actually separate what categories should be separated, who should be done this process, who is responsible to have this process done at country level, and then what does it mean to have this process done at country level to separate from bio-waste food waste data. And then all the discussion that took around 2 years around the definition itself that needed to be clarified on this specific category that is a category under the umbrella of the bio-waste as such. So having this done, let's say that this process took quite a while. Then the other process on the regulatory side was that we needed to identify what instrument from a regulatory point of view was to host this type of work on reporting and gathering data on food waste as we understand it now, once it was redefined as a separate category under the bio-waste. And that took a while as well, and it needed to have a good timing with the revisions that were ongoing for bio-waste and waste at EU level. That is why, indeed, now we have food waste as a category under Directive 2018-851. Directive 851, which actually supports the definition of the food definition under the regulation number 178 of 2002 from the EU that provides the food definition, and then from that you have waste. Which the holder, I'm reading here, which the holder in the case of food business operator or household discards or intends is required to discard. So there were many of these considerations from a legal perspective, from a methodological perspective, to actually get clear. Now, once this was done with the directive, then the directive itself asked the European Commission, the institutions to clarify the methodology that will be actually hosting this reporting and data collection. And this also needed to be done. So in the last couple of years, the European Commission, together with the other European institutions around this topic of monitoring and collection and reporting on data, worked through the European platform on food waste to clarify the method from production up to households that will follow the food business operators and households on how to report. Now, the basis is the food business operator. Then the local authority goes up to the statistical capacity of the country to monitor and collect the data, and this will be transferred to Eurostat. Now, because it reflects also data that is useful for food loss index and food waste index, this will be picked up at higher level, at regional and global level as well. So it went to a process. Now we are at the level of knowledge as well as capacity to start implementing. However, of course, we have groups of countries within the 27 European member states that still need to process a lot of this information and to actually build the capacity for implementation. And this is something that the European platform does on one side, and the countries themselves, because the directive asks them to follow this the requirements of the directive. So this is from my point of view what happened and where we are at. And we as FAO are always, available for any country that requires support and highlights this support to us in order to actually be able to deliver on this type of work. So we work through the European Commission as well as at any request of the countries to support this process. I hope I have been, following the question.
Yeah, yes, and it's a complex question, of course, and but I think the insights were very useful. Okay, maybe Maria, supply chain collaboration, big and small players.
Yes. So this one was, from our perspective, a very big point, because particularly, we focused a lot on the role of the farmer, because of course, farmers at the end of the day are really the ones that, if we want to have this work, have to be engaged and I think a very important point that was made by Jonathan is that they have to be supported in this transition. So it's not something that, even if this idea of designing products with the opportunities that I outlined before gets picked up by the big ones, then it cannot just, be an ask towards the producers, and they will implement. This is something that takes time and requires adaptation. So we really looked into that. And one thing that we saw is that a lot more in this design space, a lot more co-creation needs to happen. So there needs to be much more closeness between the producer, the farmer, and the company that is going to use the ingredients that they produce. In the moment when the production is diversified, the idea is that one could also look at one company sourcing the different ingredients for different products that they produce. So also this basically informing the design decisions that they make. And if that's not the case, also like opening for cooperatives, for instance, where also the same ingredient is produced, but because there is diversification, or there is regenerative production that has decreased the yield for a period of time, then while working together, they can still supply the right amount that was the one required before, when there was only a monoculture. So when, let's say, in practice, this can be through like longer contracts. So contracts that really give a bit of breath in terms of time for the transition. This would really be like the co-creation that we were saying. So looking at what works on this land, which practices are more are convenient for that land and makes it healthy and increase the soil health, and therefore these ingredients are the right one, and how those can be used. When it comes to policy, I think we see both in the EU and in the UK, through the CAP and the land management schemes in the UK, some possibilities of supporting such a transition. But I think what really needs to happen is this to be mainstreamed. And I fully agree again with what Jonathan said of like learning from each other, because while the UK is really trying to mainstream this approach, so like paying for environmental goods in the end, for social goods. In the EU, this is still, the eco schemes are still just one part of subsidy. And so it'd be interesting to see from the experience of the UK how this develops. And also the UK wants in the long term, by 2028, to actually not have any subsidies anymore. I think 2028, 2029, which I think is quite challenging and could potentially, this then time will say also, when we have the schemes a bit more developed, to see if this is enough to really push for a transition of the kind that we would like to envisage. But in any case, the interesting point is that it is mainstreamed, while on the EU side is still not completely the norm. So I think this couple of reflections, I would like to share for now. Thanks.
Absolutely, very useful. Jonathan, if you would like to pick up any of these points, but also your perspective on traceability and solutions for big and small companies.
Yeah, thank you. I thought it was really valid points, Maria. And actually, one thing I was going to mention, certainly from a kind of policy perspective, I think the UK government's, I can't quite believe I'm saying it, but it's been quite progressive with its agriculture bill and environment bills. And actually, I think the EU can learn a lot from it. And I'm hoping that the agriculture bill, which the premise is essentially public payment for public goods, is a very positive one. And if, the devil's in the detail, but if it's done in the right way, that can really provide a supportive policy and regulatory and payment environment, I hope, to enable circular economy. So let's see what happens. And it's kind of an interesting living experiment. So we'll see. And then just briefly on your question, Vasilios, there in terms of solution for smaller and larger companies. So I think this is something that's come up through the project, actually, and has been quite an interesting learning. And Lila might also have a perspective on it. Certainly for my business, which is very small, I think a lot of the digital solutions, so such as traceability and QR codes and things like that, are not necessarily the right solutions for small businesses. We're talking businesses that might not have, kind of even internet facilities where they're being sold, or the setup just doesn't quite enable that. It works for sort of large supply chains and through supermarkets and things like that. It doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So I just think we need to think wider. And so even things like, product labels, literally labels on packaging can be very, very helpful, backed up by information somewhere centrally that consumers can kind of understand what's behind it. So I think it's just always important when you're designing these kind of solutions and policies to think of all sizes of businesses and not just kind of the large ones.
Good. Thanks a lot, Jonathan. Leila, any points on the integration of eco-shopping system in the infrastructure of Alaya, in the systems you have?
Yes. Well, the thing is that this tool was thought and meant to be used to influence in the citizens' behavior. And as I said before, the first lesson learned there for us was that you need to spread it to all the products, because if you center your action in a small group of products, you can people are not aware of what implication this has. And also we had this pilot and integrated in Alia's small factory shop. But the good thing or the great input would be in a supermarket, and then you need to integrate this in the big companies' informatics system. So for this, I would say that the support or the pushing forward from the authorities would be necessary, and make it maybe by law. To give this, provide the consumers this information by law. Like, for example, here in Spain, the health system is for free, but it is starting to a process of informing the users, the patients, what the process and the services that they have received, what cost it had, and this is useful for people to interiorize what the impact of their behavior is. And I think this could be translated into the food and also any product, I would say.
Thank you, Leila. We're already 5 minutes before the end, but I really want to take the opportunity to ask one more round of questions. But if I would really like to ask you to do it in 1 or 2 minutes, because we have really wonderful speakers, and there are so many things I want to address. It's impossible to cover everything, but maybe one more question for all of you. So I started from Camille. I mean, supply chain analysis is one of your key streams of work at the FAO. And I was wondering if you can share some more insights on through your research, where do you see the big losses, food losses, basically, still occur today? And I know that you cannot generalize, of course, for all the different types of food products, but maybe you can use some examples from your work, where you see like there are still big losses, and also any forms of policy action that you think that can address these losses. Now, for Maria, I think you mentioned very, very, very prominent in your presentation the upcycling of products and the opportunities that it offers. Now, through Serve for Life, of course, it is true that Alaya specifically encountered some legal barriers in collecting meat, food waste, and using it for purposes beyond compost and organic fertilizers. So it seems that the EU regulatory framework is still very strict, or sometimes it includes very high administrative requirements that don't really open the door for other solutions. Now, when taking into account, of course, that food safety should be the key objective. I mean, do you see some kind of conflict sometimes between circularity and policies coming from other domains? Do you think that there could be some barriers to upcycling that they could be somehow removed in the future, taking into account, of course, that food safety should be the top priority? I don't know if you have any perspectives on this. Now, for Jonathan, Yeah, if you can say in a couple of minutes any views on the measuring the environmental impacts of products, the calculations we did in the project, and what are really the lessons learned in terms of finding data for this calculator. I know you're also a consultant working on this, and maybe you can clarify first if this is a form of a life cycle assessment or not covering only some parts of it. That's one thing. And second, I mean, where do you see the big gaps are in collecting data, and what could be done to address this challenge? And finally, for you, Laila, I saw in one of your slides that the labels were visible, the Sec for Life labels in the meat products. So that was something that came out of the project. I was wondering, I mean, do you consider this as a big success? Do you think that such labels available at regional level could play an impact, or is it better maybe to have EU labels covering everything because this could create confusion among consumers from your personal perspective? So, in 1 or 2 minutes each of you, I start with Camelia. I know it's challenging, but let's try to make it okay.
All right, so, well, your question is very right to the point, because when we talk about policy decisions, we may actually refer to a subsector specific requirement that needs to be tackled and the solution that is sector specific. So indeed, knowing what are the broad categories that are wasted more, of course, let's say helps a lot around this. Now, from the data that are available to date, the most at risk to be wasted are the perishables, so fruits and vegetables, anything around leafy fruits and vegetables, and the bakery products. Now, this may also be due to the fact that of the nature of the product itself. Highly perishable, very sensitive to mechanical damage or injuries from cold or heat. And so this is something that policy on one side, of course, because we are within the broader framework of increased efficiency of the supply chains, already addresses to some point. Now, for the bakery products, another aspect would need to be considered, that bakery products are, even more closer to the consumer. So from that perspective, consumer awareness on actually food literacy, the capacity of consumers to manage their own food supply, acquisition and management in the household, this goes into the behavior kind of policy nudge theories, that more and more the food system approach and the food policy approach that is more and more gaining, importance and relevance for the EU is trying, and already has some measures, including, and reflections are already, there. So for around the diet, let's say the diets, around nutrition, so that would go hand in hand with prevention of food loss and waste. Now, what perhaps is also relevant to mention is that the European Platform on Food Loss and Waste already has identified some of the key areas as solutions. So we have, for instance, prepared food around food services. So anything that concerns catering and restaurants and institutional catering. Around these meals, so the category of meals, prepared food, this is one as well. A huge amount of food is being wasted, and this is even more, different from what we say around a long food supply, the food supply chain, perishables and bakery products, more close to supply to the end of the supply chain for households and retail. We have meals that are being prepared, and in that case, we talk about a completely set of different set of priorities that policy may have. And in this case, the European Platform has issued these guidelines around recovery and distribution of safe and nutritious food for human consumption, has clarified lots of the concerns of liability, for instance, for businesses. So instruments at policy level, such as food safety and quality, clarifications around, are we able to implement some type of solutions for meals? Yes, we do have this. However, what I would say that from a policy perspective, much has been done to identify the problems, the causes, and then solutions that have been already prioritized. Increase efficiency, raise awareness, food safety and quality, infrastructure. So those are there. What is missing perhaps, and it may not be, unfortunately, it may not be, as easy as saying that we need another type of policy around this. What is missing is that the transfer of the policy that was already, considered as a top priority as a solution to the implementation side. And this, let's say, this missing, still a reality check for the policies that were, considered relevant to develop. This policy check for the implementation still needs to take place in order to actually scale up these solutions. Of course, projects, of course, local projects, local authorities, nations that have national campaigns around this would definitely make a difference to scale up the solutions that were already identified for these, at least these three categories that are, highest on the quantity side. And of course, we talk about only 3 examples, because when data are going to be produced and reported from the countries, we may have, another discussion on what is going to be highlighted there.
Thank you, Camilla. Very useful. Maria, upcycling and legal barriers or constraints.
Yes, I'll try to be super brief. So I think that the health element will stay, and rightly so. At the same time, there is more need to, I think, to highlight the opportunities that is there, and also to align from a policy perspective the priorities. So when it is about the agriculture, but it's also about the bioeconomy, and if we really want, to push that and to support like a differentiation in the bioeconomy, this is really an untapped opportunity. In terms of timings and let's say and support, I think another element is the research and innovation area. All that space that can really showcase applications and can really work in showcasing the health aspects of it, and that could potentially speed up then the approval for the reuse of the byproduct. There are also companies that find that the process was not very different from the one that they had from their initial product. So I guess it also depends on the ingredients that we're speaking about. So there might be challenges as well that really depend on the segment that we're looking at in the food context.
Perfect, very useful. Jonathan, carbon calculator, lessons learned.
Yeah, thank you. So the carbon calculator is specifically just measuring carbon dioxide equivalents, so not an LCA-based calculator. In terms of the upsides of capturing data, I think that's a really interesting question. And actually, one thing we're doing is collating a load of data, aggregating it anonymously to really understand the trends. And it's very important for benchmarking as well. So saying to farmers and growers, well, what's the average? What are you comparing against? Are you better? Are you worse? And what are the trends of the sectors? And that's also very useful, I think, for policymakers, governments, and industry. So data is kind of really, really big. In terms of, in very practical terms, what are the big emissions from farming? I'm talking just kind of farming to farm gate, effectively. The big kind of 3 generally are artificial fertilizers, livestock, and fuels. Those are kind of the big areas. And in terms of carbon sequestration, and these I will say are the opportunities, the exciting opportunities for farmers and growers, soils, hedgerows, and trees. And particularly I'd highlight soils. It's a real win-win. If you can increase the organic matter in your soil, you're increasing the health of it, the fertility, the sequestration, and hopefully the crop health and therefore productivity. So it's a total win-win, and a focus on soil is absolutely critical. So I hope that's helpful.
Very helpful, Jonathan. Very good. Laila, labels and lessons and key messages. In 1 minute, if you can do this, like very briefly, yes.
Yeah, I will try. Yes, for us, definitely the label was a need that we detected, that it arose in the project. No matter what you do, you improve, you need to show it in a proper way to the users. Well, we think from the beginning we thought that the sustainability efforts need to be or normalized or recognized somehow. So yes, one of the lesson learned is that certification should be needed from the regulation. I don't know if our eco-label, our label, let's say sustainable label, was very successful among the citizens. It showed in a easy way to the information we wanted to show. But maybe the European eco-label should evolve somehow. This is what we could recommend, because the eco-labels shows only a part of the efforts in sustainability, not the whole. And that's it.
Laila, many thanks, and I know we are already kind of we have taken a lot of your time. Before we close, we have an illustrator with us who has Alex Garin, who has prepared some nice illustrations summarizing discussions, and it's worth spending a few seconds just showing them. Okay, I think that's, yeah. I think that illustrates the complexity of many of the issues that were raised. Of course. Very good. And this, we will also upload them to the Hopin platform afterwards, just for you if you want to go back to these illustrations. So many thanks, Alex, for your work. And before I close, just to remind everyone that the webinar basically will be made available on YouTube. So I know that some of the points were a bit technical. So if you want to go back to the discussions, it will be made available on YouTube. You will receive the presentations as well. That's the final event of Sec4Life, but the Sec4Life website, sec4life.eu, will be active for quite some time. And there is a lot of technical work and also policy relevant work, many project reports that you can go back and see what we have actually achieved. I would like to thank all our 4 speakers, Maria, Camilla, Laila, and Jonathan. I know, super interesting discussion, combining lessons from business, but also from, let's say, from an international organizational point of view. I don't think we closed all of the issues. We could have discussed for much longer, but in the end, there are some restrictions. Thank you for your time. I hope you found it useful, and we should definitely all stay in touch. So wish everyone a good day, our panelists, our participants as well. And yeah, have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.